You own a suit. Oh, look at this guy. Yeah. Quieter vegetable, you know what I mean? I thought I would be a little respectful. I know what it's like sitting up on stage with it's not fun. No, I ate all my noisiest and quietest. My eating snacks. All left the celery I gave him next to it, so yeah, no, man, honestly, I think the greatest music. I'm not jealous. Would you have been nominated? general.
Two here. Four? Well, I don't know if we can do four.
Well, you'll have to split them around. There's one here.
Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Check.
Hello, everyone. We're going to start in 2 minutes, so just sit tight, and the program will begin shortly. Thank you.
to get it out. We're not going to get it out at all times.
What is happening? It's just so
Thank you.
I don't try not to say something after.
said, let there be light.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the King's University College Students' Council Future of London Mayoral Debate. My name is Hadia Fiaz. I'm in my 4th year of Political Science and Philosophy, and I'm the Student Council President here at King's. I wanted to begin by respectfully recognizing that the land we are on is not our own. We acknowledge that our campus is situated on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenapehoak, and Attawandaron peoples, all of whom have long-standing relationships to the land of southwestern Ontario and the City of London. The First Nations communities of our local area include Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, Munsee Delaware Nation, and in our region there are 11 First Nations communities, as well as a growing Indigenous urban population. King's University College values the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and all of the original peoples of Turtle Island, also known as North America. Tonight's event is an entirely student-led initiative aimed at highlighting the importance of municipal politics for all members of our community, but especially for students. Students make up a vital core of London's population and add to the vibrancy of the city. From our economic impact to our charitable work in the community, for making up to 50% of the LTC's ridership. Students are a key stakeholder in fostering the development of London. We're all sitting here tonight in this beautiful Kenny Theatre for a reason. Why? Because tonight and all the other nights when you attended events related to the election, researched the candidates' platforms, or simply chose to attend tonight, you are trying to make a decision of who will play a leading role in determining the future of London. The decisions that are made in City Hall impact all of our day-to-day lives, which is why it's important that we do our research and make an informed decision. The questions of tonight's debate will be around the themes of transit, economic development, pedestrian and student safety, poverty, sexual violence prevention, affordable housing, and the environment. In choosing our themes, our hope was to choose issues that were holistic enough to help you make this important decision. Tonight, I'll ask 2 things from you. First, I ask you to be a visionary, to be genuinely thinking about what type of London you want to live in. Forget about everything that makes politics confusing, disinteresting, put that all aside and focus on one simple question. What type of city do you want to live in? And who out of all the candidates can genuinely work towards that goal? The second thing I ask of you is to be critical. This is probably one of the most important lessons one learns at a liberal arts college. Listen intently to the question and whether or not the answers actually address what's being asked, and if they're robust and actionable. Don't get caught up in the buzzwords and the fluff. Focus on what matters so you can make the best decision when you hit the polls October 22nd. Before I hand the mic off to our moderator, I'd like to thank the partners that helped make this event a reality. Communications Department at King's, King's Debate Society, King's Political Science Students Association, Social Justice and Peace Club, and St. Michael's Parish. Thank you for all of your hard work. And thank you to all of you for spending your evening with us, and I hope that you enjoy tonight's event. I will now pass it on to Paul, our moderator for the evening. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Hadia. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the KUCSC Mayoral Debate. My name is Paul Radakia, the 3rd Paul tonight, and I will be your moderator this evening. I'll begin by going over audience housekeeping rules. There will be no heckling, cell phones are to be turned off or left on silent, and there will be no flash photography at this event. If any of you should need to use the restroom, please quietly exit the theater and turn left. There will be signs that will direct you to the restrooms. Tonight's debate will open with candidates' introductions. Each candidate will have 1 minute to introduce themselves, and the speaking order will be alphabetical. Following introductions, there will be 3 sections of questions, which I will explain in detail shortly. The debate will close with candidates' concluding remarks. As with the introductions, each candidate will be given a minute to make their final comments, and the speaking order will be reverse alphabetical. During the first section of questions, students will ask the candidates pre-written questions. This section will have 2 rounds of questioning. Candidates will be grouped into pairs of 2 based upon the content of their platforms. During the first round of questions, each student will ask their question. Candidate 1 will have 45 seconds to respond to the question. Candidate 2 will have 30 seconds to rebut, and Candidate 1 will have 30 seconds to rebut Candidate 2's rebuttal. I know, lots of rebutting. This section will last 30 minutes. In the second section, each candidate will have the opportunity to ask another candidate a question. The asking candidate will be referred to in this explanation, but not in the actual debate, as Candidate 1, and the answering candidate will be referred to as Candidate 2. Candidate 1 will have 15 seconds to ask Candidate 2 a question. Candidate 2 will have 45 seconds to respond to the question. Candidate 1 will have 30 seconds to make a rebuttal, and Candidate 2 will have 30 seconds to rebut Candidate 1's rebuttal. Bear with me here. This section will last 20 minutes. In the debate's third and final section, audience members will have the opportunity to ask candidates questions. All those that want to ask questions are required to write down their questions prior to asking them, and are to go to the open mics on the left and right of the seating area after the final rebuttal of the second section, where our volunteers will ensure that the questions are appropriate. Each audience member will have 30 seconds to ask a question, and mics will be cut after 30. We're going to be hard on this. The candidate to whom the question is asked will have 40 seconds to respond. This section will last 30 minutes. Before we kick things off, I will briefly go over the candidates' rules, and I've already explained this to them. Questions will not be repeated. There will be no speaking out of turn. Candidates will not speak beyond their allotted time, and if they do, their mics will be turned off during their responses. The only paper permitted on stage will be the notebooks that council has provided. There will be 1 knock when a candidate exceeds half of their speaking time, a second knock when a candidate has 10 seconds remaining, and 2 knocks when the time has expired. Without further ado, let the KUCSC mayoral debate begin. Mr. Baramporian, you have 1 minute to introduce yourself starting now.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As you heard, my name is Baramporian. I must say I was driving today and I saw a lot of signs out there, a lot of mayoral signs. I wonder how much money has been spent on these signs and if these monies could be put to better use. I am here because they've been encouraging me and asking me to run for the city since early 2001. And I've only decided to run this term because I've seen a lot of people have come and gone, and I was very curious to see what is the problem and why is there no one to fix it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Baramporian. Next up, we will have Mr. Chang.
If I may, I'll just stand in front instead of behind the podium. I'm short. You run for politics and put your family through the meat grinder because you have a burning desire, something burning in your gut, in your stomach. It just drives you. You're either fighting for something or you're fighting against something. I'm fighting for the future of London, the next generation, you folks that are attending school here. I want you to have a future here in London and have a family and your children when they can come up and to me when I'm getting old and say, decrepit, Mr. Chang, it's because of you we stayed and we made a living out of here. That gives me all the thrill I need. Thank you.
Mr. Holder, you're up next.
Thank you, Kings, and thank you all. My name is Ed Holder. As a child growing up, I was imbued with a great sense of service from my family. My mother always gave me 3 lessons that I thought were important. First, she said, you must always work hard. Second, if you work a little harder, you should be able to keep a little bit more. And finally, she said that a caring community is measured by how we take care of those who are less able to take care of themselves. And perhaps ultimately, to me, the community service is the price you pay to live in a place. And I've tried to do that through my life in my last 37 years in London. As a business person, we added 100 employees plus when I was president of Stevenson Hunt Insurance. In politics, I was 7 years in federal politics as a member of parliament and 2 years as a minister. And finally, I've been involved in some 40 different organizations in community, not-for-profit in this city, and it would be my honor to be involved. Thank you very much.
Mr. Leonard, your time is up. Or you're ready to go.
Had me worried there. I was up here studying engineering more than 30 years ago. Yeah. Last Saturday, a guy was on a roof. Jump, 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 they said, down below, and he did. No one caught him. So now he's fighting for his life in the hospital. Nearly 30 others were taken in by ambulance with him that day. If he comes back here to Western, will he be in a wheelchair if he lives? My story has parallels with his. I ended up at Fanshawe and graduated in electronics. Some are saying, shut down fake homecoming, send in the riot police. That's a little bit extreme. I'm running for mayor for those people in the hospital. I'm running for a middle ground, some negotiation. Let's see if we can get along. On October 22nd, vote Dan for mayor.
Ms. Mccutcheon, you're up next.
My name is Nina Mccutcheon, and I'm an activist. I am a lady of action and not just words. I desire so much to make a difference in London, Ontario. I believe that priority is an essence, that it is lacking here in London, Ontario. I've had a taste of poverty. I've worked hard into leadership, and I've worked as a volunteer with the London, Ontario Police Academy. I have a wonderful mentor out there that's a sergeant and has actually indicated that she's very proud of me. I have worked in the field of surety with crime prevention. I've had hands-on experience with poverty and helping others through their difficulties in life. I've also experienced the system, and I desire to make a change here in London, Ontario.
Mr. Milley, you're up next.
Thank you very much. My name is David Milley. I'm running for mayor. I'm here today because London is growing. London has always grown. At our current growth rate, London will be a 1 million person strong city in 108 years. If the mayoral candidates up here today are able to get our growth rate and our economic growth rate on course with the Canadian average, we'll be there in 58 years. The students sitting in this room right now, in their lifetime, will see a 1 million person London. And London deserves a mayor and a city council who will address that, who will plan for the future, and who will create jobs that will be long-lasting. I'm David Milley. Thank you very much.
Mr. Murray, you're up next.
See if this thing's working. Okay, I said back in the green room to someone that when I am elected mayor on the 22nd, we are going to have to rewrite the laws of political science. Right now we are stagnant at a point where if you took every person in the city to sign a petition wanting something, City Hall can tear up that petition and do what they want to do anyway. I propose to let the public make the choices and tell City Hall this is what we want done. I want to set up a website where the public can come on and discuss, and then the public will vote in whatever they want voted in, and then City Hall's job will be to do what the people want them to. And I'm ready to watch London grow to 1 million people.
Mr. O'Connell, you're up next.
Good evening. I'm Sean O'Connell, and I want to talk to you about this election. In this election, we've heard excuses as to why we as a city cannot achieve BRT or a whole host of other issues, that things are too difficult. They want you to have doubt about these things, but I don't have doubt, and I'll tell you why. I had an idea. When I applied to the House of Commons, I had many people say to me that it wasn't possible, that I was wasting my money, or worse, that I wasn't capable. I wasn't deterred. I knew I would succeed, and it took a year, but I was offered an interview and later a job. Therefore, if we want to achieve prosperity, we have to stop telling ourselves it's not possible and begin to work together until we have achieved it. As mayor, I would work with City Council to resolve our challenges, to improve our quality of life, and make London prosperous. Thank you.
Mr. Pilato, you're up next.
Thank you to the King's College Student Union for hosting this grudge match and for inviting us here tonight. I'm glad all of you could come tonight. I'm very pleased and privileged as a mayoral candidate to be standing before you looking for your support. The City of London is dealing with some serious challenges, and I can remember a time when it had great cachet, great standing nationally and in the region. And now we're looking at opportunities to try and deal with some very difficult issues. Jobs, stresses, safe addiction issues, housing issues, a lot of challenges, and challenges that you're facing as young people in terms of finding your path in our community. I have some business experience. I've been very fortunate in my life to also have some public sector experience. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity to start to apply what I call action plans and real, meaningful work towards the delivery of the service level that you can come to expect and appreciate. So I look forward to your questions tonight, and thank you very much for coming.
Ms. Park, you're up next.
I'm Tanya Park, and I believe in London. I believe in the people who live here. I believe in social justice, inclusion, and equity. London has had a really stellar track record over the last 4 years, despite what you might have heard earlier. This city council has paid down over 10% of our debt. We have seen unemployment rate to the lowest point in over a decade. And we have seen over $1 billion in growth and development in our community each of every one of those 4 years. Out of all the candidates here tonight, I am the only one with the experience in the business of running this city. I've been there on every standing committee, every budget, on 8 boards and commissions. I think it's incredibly important that the next leader of London has that experience so they can step into the mayor's office and address the key the key issues that we're facing in our community: homelessness, addictions, and poverty. We have to have a good working relationships with the social service agencies that are helping those individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, for your introductions. We will now be proceeding into Section 1, Student Questions. The first student may ask their question now.
Hello. My name is Allison Langell, and I am completing my 2nd year in the Honors Specialization in Community and Criminal Justice program, and my question is as follows. According to the London Free Press, the average rent for a 1-bedroom apartment in London has risen 15% during the last year to $980 a month. What would you do as mayor to ensure Londoners have access to affordable housing in the city?
Mr. Chang, you now have 45 seconds to respond to the question.
Thank you, Alice. The rent you mentioned is $980 according to the Free Press. Well, I just met some fellow students. They tell me their rent is $675 per room. Affordable housing used to be a standard business issue here. We had them. But I spoke with the developers. They stopped because City Hall got involved. It got so complicated, they gave up. They'll build it. I asked them. They says, we want to help our fellow people. But the bureaucracy and the red tape, they got so tired of it, they says, we just walked away. There were easier money to make elsewhere. So it can be done. Thank you.
Mr. Baron-Porian, you now have 30 seconds to rebut.
It is true what Mr. Chang said. There's a lot of complication in the City Hall. But first and foremost, we have to see who is the cause of this. The cause is that we are letting people that have great intentions, but not capability of doing and accomplishing what they say they're going to accomplish. What we need to do is bypass all of these media that we see, okay, tagging people, the 4 best candidates here and there, or the 4 best candidates here and there, and we go deep down and decide which candidate is going to do it and do it right once and for all. Thank you very much.
Before I recognize the next question, the next pairing will be Ms. Park as the person responding to the question and Mr. Holder as the person rebutting the question. So without further ado, you're free to ask the next question.
Hello, my name is Ben Kitching. I am a second-year political science student here at King's. So my question is, the City of London has said that the proposed bus rapid transit system will decrease congestion and the negative economic and environmental effects of it. Additionally, the City of London's 2015 to 2019 strategic plan expresses commitments to robust infrastructure, convenient and connected mobility choices, and a strong and healthy environment. Given this, can London afford to reject the BRT?
Thank you for that very well articulated question. And I think no, we cannot say no thanks to this opportunity. Over the last 10 years, City Council and the London Transit Commission have been working very hard to expand the business of public transportation in our community. This level of business is busting at the seams. And in any line of business, when you're looking to grow it, you look where the growth opportunities are, and you do just that, you invest in them. That is exactly what this plan is about, investing in public transportation. But it's also important to get cars out of the way of buses and buses out of the way of the cars. And that's the simplest way to look at this whole project. Not only are we looking at hundreds of millions of dollars in our investment in our community, we're looking at a way to fix a generational problem in our community.
Well, thank you for the question, Ben. Firstly, let's be clear. The federal Liberals have said that the $204 million that they are committed to are not conditional on BRT. There was only one party in the last provincial election that said that it was conditional on BRT, and that was the provincial Liberals, and it is now the Conservatives in power. And that's $170 million. So I'm confident that we will be able to go forward with serious transportation for our city with without those impediments. And the issue, is that done?
Keep going, you still have 6 seconds.
And the issue of BRT being too expensive, which it is, takes too long, and frankly destroys too many homes and businesses.
Thank you, Mr. Holder. Ms. Park, you now have 30 seconds to rebut.
Thank you. Whether you like bus rapid transit or not, our community is in for over 10 years of construction on these corridors. And the question I want to put to you is, do you want the money that you've already paid to Toronto and Ottawa to come home to build that system, or do we want our property taxes to raise? If you ask for a certain amount of money with a business case, it would be very financially irresponsible for a level of government to say, here's the same amount of money and we don't have a plan to back it up. We have a plan that has been well vetted, well engineered, and has seen...
Thank you, Ms. Park. I would ask that both candidates please return to their seats. I'm going to make a brief reminder to the candidates that you will have a chance to respond to a question. The rebutter will have a chance to rebut the question, and then the person who has asked the question will then have a chance to re-rebut. And again, it's first tap at half, second tap at 10 seconds left, and the 2 taps to tell you that your time is up. And without further ado, the next pairing will be Mr. Milley as the person responding, and Mr. Leonard as the person rebutting. You are free to ask the question.
Hello, my name is Seamus Sylvester. I'm a 4th-year honors Spec History student here at King's. And I place great value on the political candidates' understanding of economic issues. If it's true that increasing the minimum wage makes low-skilled labor more expensive for local businesses, thereby forcing these businesses to hire less low-skilled labor, then London is at risk of facing increasing rates of unemployment. So what actions would you, as mayor, take to develop the skills and experience of young or low-skilled workers to make it easier for them to find stable employment in local and regional economies? Thank you.
Good question. Thank you very much, Seamus. I think that we need to invest in our educational institutions. We need to make sure that people are aware of the options available here at Western through continuing studies and through Fanshawe College through its continuing studies as well. Those skills are vital. You'll graduate with a university degree without many practical applications for all of your knowledge. Getting that is important, including cooperative education programs, ensuring that London companies have what it takes to be able to hire students, to be able to give them a chance to prove themselves. At my employer, we hire them all. We will hire you after you're done your co-op because you had a chance to prove yourself and your worth. Thank you.
25% of Londoners, that's 100,000 or more, have given up on looking for work. They've fallen off the rolls. That's a lot of people, folks. Add in the students, Fanshawe and Western, who are coming out, and it's double and triple the unemployment rate. We're in big trouble here, and we need to get them placements, paid placements, get the Chamber of Commerce involved, City Hall, to get them from school into the work environment.
Your time is up, Mr. Leonard.
Thank you.
You may go ahead and rebut, Mr. Milley.
Are you doing the timer now?
Yes.
Okay. I think that London does have the lowest, we are correct, London does have an extremely low labor participation rate, either due to retirement or because people have given up on looking for a job. We need to make sure that those people are going to get re-engaged in the workforce, that you're able to find a career that suits you, a job that makes you fulfilled, and a job that makes you happy. I'm also a very big proponent of a living wage. You should not work 40 hours a week to live in poverty.
Thank you, candidates. The next student may ask their question.
Do you want to do their pair?
Apologies. So the next pairing will be Ms. Mccutcheon as the person responding to the question, and Mr. O'Connell as the person rebutting the question.
Hi, so I'm Nicole Foster. I'm in my 4th year of honors specialization in political science. And my question is, in any given year, 1 in 5 Canadians experiences a mental illness or addiction problem. London is not an exception to this, seeing as addiction is a large problem in our community. How will you improve access for our most vulnerable citizens, and what do you expect to spend to implement these new services?
Ms. Mccutcheon, if you could please come to the stage. Thank you.
I believe addiction is a huge problem in London, Ontario, and that it needs a enforcement plan, it needs a treatment plan. And I've been working on this for 5 years, a little bit with the council, on my own time, and working with poverty people on the streets of London, Ontario. I believe that London LPH is up to for grabs, and I'm hoping that maybe in London, Ontario, that we could start a treatment plan here in London for addiction issues and poverty issues. I believe this is essential that a
Ms.
program...
Ms. Mccutcheon, your time is up.
Okay.
In terms of addictions, that's why we were talking about the safe injection site. I was at City Hall, I heard both sides of the argument, and I do support the initiative because it saves lives. In terms of mental health, a lot of people are affected by mental health, myself included. I know what people go through, and it's part of our struggle to actually get the province on board to develop a comprehensive plan that we need for this city, because we need to have these actions now. So as mayor, I would be talking to the powers that be.
Mr. Leonard, your time is up. Ms. Mccutcheon, you may rebut the rebuttal now.
Okay. I still believe that a treatment plan in London, Ontario is very important. We need to get people off the streets into a plan that is suitable and into different processes that are organized with priority. They need to be able to maintain their lives better, learn more, and get educated, and be able to live their lives in a proper housing situation.
Thank you, candidates. The next pairing will be, as the responder to the question, Mr. Holder, and as the person rebutting, Mr. Pilato.
Hello. Hello. My name is Karina Gabriel, and I'm an executive of the University Students' Council. Last year, City Council approved their partnership with the UN Women and Girls Safe Cities Initiative through Innova, making London, Ontario the third city in all of Canada to be doing this initiative. Safe Cities and its mapping tool will provide the data that will shed light on a public health concern that feminists have been highlighting for years, that sexual violence in our communities is a huge problem. My question is, taking into context the strides London has made within the last year through Safe Cities, what real work do you intend on doing to reduce sexual violence in our community, educate young people about consent, and create a culture shift away from normalizing rape culture in the City of London?
Well, thank you for the question. You know, it's easy for any of us as politicals to say what we might do. Let me tell you what I have done. I've worked very closely with my sister's place. Having been on the campaign cabinet of United Way twice, I understand the work that we have done as it relates to issues around sexual violence. And equally, I've been extremely active with the Muslim Resource Center, the London Muslim Resource Center, which is a model for the world, frankly, in terms of the work that they do to try to prevent sexual violence. And so what I want to do is work with these organizations, as I have in the past, and make sure that they are clearly promoted throughout the city and make them a model so that Londoners can understand that when they have a place that they need to go, they've got resources that they can refer to.
Mr. Pilato, you may now rebut.
Thanks for the question. On my time on the police board, one of the biggest frustrations I had was the amount of sexual violence stories and scenarios that were being presented. And one of the ways I'm beginning to believe that we need to start attacking this is by attacking the perpetrators. I'm talking about greater enforcement, but I'm also talking about the Johns themselves, the people who prey on women, and starting to out them and starting to make them part of the public dialogue. This type of shaming, as bad as it is going to start to create the behavioral changes we need to create the respect that women frankly
Mr. Pilato,
deserves.
your time is up. Mr. Holder, you may now rebut the rebuttal.
Thanks very much. When I was a member of Parliament, I was proud to be part of a party that put together through Minister Peter MacKay specific legislation focusing on Johns so that we could stop that level of preying upon women. I think that's an exceptionally important thing that we have done, and it's that kind of work that we have done when we tied in my sister's place, when we tied in the Muslim Resource Center. That we tried to do is to bring that awareness to stop that type of violence.
Mr. Holder, your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. The next pairing will be Mr. Murray as the person responding to the question and Mr. Milley as the person rebutting the question. Mr. Murray, if you could please come up to the stage.
You'd like me to come up?
Do you want to sit there?
You can come up in your chair.
Well, actually, yes. I will do that.
Are you okay?
No, I need that. People are making things more complicated.
Thank you, candidates.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. My name is Danielle Boucher, and I'm a third-year student, double majoring in social justice and peace studies and political science. My question for you is, so according to the 2016 National Household Survey, the overall prevalence of low income in London is 18.8%, or over 71,000 individuals. According to a report by the city released last September, 58% of these people experience chronic homelessness. There have been some extremely insensitive practices in London in regards to poverty and homelessness. This past August, up to 30 people who were camped behind Arcade Mission in Old East Village had to pick up what they had salvaged in tents, cardboard boxes, and leave. This tent community for the city's homeless was one of the many which have been increasingly popping up across London. How can we create an awareness, or if necessary, an incentive, to invest more into the needs of the city's marginalized people rather than treat them as pest control problem?
Well, being that when I look out my bathroom window, I can see 3 or 4 tents set up with people that are homeless and they can't get into even the shelters. I view that we need to do something about this, and I believe it should be City Hall's job to give every person that wants to be working, put them to work somewhere. If someone can't find work, they should be able to go to City Hall and say, put me to work. And having minimum wage even would be enough to be able to pay for a reasonably priced home.
Thank you. Mr. Miller, you now have 30 seconds to rebut.
I think that we need to make sure that there's enough space in the shelters to be able to take in those who are in the tents. We need to be able to take those that are in the shelters and move them into a more temporary housing. We need to take those in temporary housing and get them permanent locations to live. In downtown, we have 100 units being taken up by Airbnb. If we release them back into the market, we will make housing more affordable for the middle class, which will produce more units available to the lower class. Thank you.
Mr. Murray, you now have 30 seconds to rebut the rebuttal.
Yes, particularly there is something that was brought to my attention is that the men have an advantage at being sheltered over the women because of the men's mission. The women can go there and stay for the night, but they have to be out at 7 o'clock in the morning. And I would like to have the mission be changed over to be for both men and women, not having women claim their boyfriends are beating them so they can go to a shelter.
Thank you, candidates. The next pairing will be Mr. Leonard as the person responding to the question and Ms. Park as the person rebutting the question.
Hi.
May ask the question.
My name's Indra Nyamvumba. I'm 4th year, Poli-Sci Honors Specialization, and my question is, London Civic Works Committee has recently endorsed the city's plan to reduce waste by 60%, paving the way for a green bin program. The green bin program, dependent on household, would cost roughly $36 per year and is already supported by a large portion of the London community. Noting that London is lagging behind many Ontario counterparts by not having a composting program. So, what is your position on London's waste reduction strategy and specifically the potential for a green bin program?
Yes, it's a very good question. We have a problem with our dump in the W12. It's getting full, and we're going to need a new one. But the province won't let us get a new one or expand it unless we have more diversion into programs like the one suggested in the question. But to get it up and running is going to take an investment, as was stated, $36 per year, and that's going to multiply that out per every household in the city. It's not going to be cheap. And this, unfortunately, is the reputation of the city. It's not a conservative city, it's a cheap city. So we need to go forward for the sake of the future and not just throw things in the dump. We need to divert them into the green bin program.
Thank you. Early in our term, when we were implementing the first multi-year budget, Councillors Turner, Ridley, and myself tried to push a green bin program back then in 2015. Unfortunately, at that time, our colleagues did not support that, but we did continue the work with this 60% waste diversion plan. This plan I'm in full support of. I think that London, as a community, we're way behind others, especially if you look down the road to St. Thomas. They've had a green bin program for years. This plan also gives individuals same-day garbage collection, which is something people have wanted for decades in London.
So we need to do this, and we need to get people to open up their wallets to go forward with this. In a related vein, the sewage plant is going to blow up if it doesn't get replaced. So these are unpleasant topics, but they need to be done, and we need to go forward. We can't keep throwing things in the trash or down the toilet. So an investment is required, and it's not going to be cheap. So we need to go forward as a city together, as a community.
Thank you, candidates. The next pairing will be Mr. O'Connell as the person responding to the question and Mr. Chang as the person rebutting the question.
Hello, my name is Neve Sylvester, and I'm a second-year poli-sci honor specialization student. In London's road safety plan, the goal outlined is to implement programs that will bring a 10% reduction in collisions by 2019. Traffic collision data has shown that the majority of traffic collisions occurred at or near intersections. Seeing as the Western and Sarnia Road intersection is a high-traffic area neighbored by 3 student residences, if elected, what would you do to improve pedestrian safety in and around Western Campus?
Good question to start with. Let's start with the basics. I find zebra crossings aren't really identified strong enough or wide enough. So on a basic level, we can do something like that. In terms of the actual coming in onto campus, obviously the speed limit needs to be observed, and we need to have a reduction in the rate if it is too high at the moment. Because especially when it comes down to these particular areas, people need to be mindful of pedestrians. Unfortunately, London hasn't been as mindful of pedestrians. It's still too focused on the car, and we need to change our mindset about that.
Mr. Chang, you can now rebut.
My opponent brought up a good point. It is the enforcement, but the walking, the crosswalk lights is something I want done, because every other modern city has lights when pedestrians cross. We don't have that, so I want that. That's a basic start.
Thank you. Are you finished?
Thank you. That's good.
Great. Mr. O'Connell, you now have 30 seconds to rebut the rebuttal.
We do have lights that observe when you try to cross the street.
Not enough.
And it's largely boils down to, like I said, about people observing. Partly, I think it has to do with greater education and more identification in terms of those areas. If the signs are too small, they need to be larger. I have been at places where stop signs were twice as large, and that does have an impact.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates. The next pairing will be Mr. Beremporium as the person responding to the question, and Mr. Murray as the person rebutting the question. And Mr. Murray, I apologize. You can stay where you are if you wish, because you have the lapel mic. And you can come up to the stage if you wish as well.
This one's easy to get to.
Hi, my name is Laura. I'm a first year in Social Justice and Peace Studies. London has seen an explosive growth in construction of large detached homes on the outskirts of the city. My question is, do you see the rapid expansion of suburban sprawl as a problem for the city's future environmental and economic sustainability?
Thank you for your question, Laura. Yes, indeed, I do see that as a problem. It is true that bigger cities have bigger problems, but it is not bigger problems that make the cities bigger. We are sitting on a green belt, and I'm against using any green land while we have so many regions, so many sections of London that needs reconstruction. I'm 100% behind changing and rezoning those sections so that we can give them permits easier so that they can develop those regions before even touching any green land in and around London. Thank you very much.
Mr. Murray, you may now rebut.
Well, Jim Arts owns an awful lot of the land that goes between London and Lambeth, and he is developing that land on large parcels of land and $500,000 homes, and there are customers that want that. That is private business. But these homes are going to be highly taxed too, so that's what the owners have to think of. They're going to be contributing to the infrastructure of London.
Thank you. Mr. Beremporium, you may now have a 30-second rebuttal to the rebuttal.
It is true taxes are good for us because we use it as income for the city. But reducing taxes, which I am planning to do if I can, is one of the ways to develop the city. Because those people that can, for example, starting businesses, newer businesses that pay lesser taxes, they can hire 2, 3 more people. People like yourself that graduate, people like students at Fanshawe, for example, that finish their internship or studies that they're doing in at Fanshawe.
Mr. Beremporium, your time is up.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, candidates.
Okay, thank you.
And for the final question and pairing of this section, we have Mr. Pilato as the person responding to the question, and Ms. Mccutcheon as the person rebutting the question.
Hello, candidates. My name is Claire Lindley, and I'm a fourth-year student in an honors double major in social justice and peace studies, as well as history. My question pertains to affordable housing. The Minister of Housing and Poverty Reduction Strategy stated, "When people have a roof over their heads, they have a foundation to achieve great things." Today, we have reached an agreement with the federal government to deliver sustained and expanded housing affordable in Ontario. Seeing as London in 2017 failed to meet the low-income housing demand by at least 4,500 units, how as mayor will you strategize in conjunction with the national and federal demands to expand low-income housing in London?
Me first. Thank you for the question. I have a son not much older than you, and I really want to get him out of the house, so I'm very motivated on this issue. The thing that I would suggest to you is basically as follows. First of all, we have a housing stock problem, so we're going to have to find the capital for it. I would like to tap our pension funds to provide us with that capital to repair the 3,500 units that are now tired and bring the 3,000 additional units online to help us. I also want to look at bonusing and incentives to the developers to put inclusionary housing in place so that we have affordable housing options for young people. And the third thing, and I think this is as important as anything, is to provide facilities where young people can actually look to own a home someday, and that means we need to expand our inventory and improve our planning processes. Thanks for the question.
Thank you.
I believe affordable housing, alongside anything else like poverty or treatment, we need a financial plan that is stable in London, Ontario. I believe that one financial plan that is over the poverty line will be a great start in helping with affordable housing and poverty issues as well. I think that we're lacking in priority again in London, Ontario, financially and all the above. I think that we need to be more organized and get things done.
And you now have a 30-second rebuttal to the rebuttal, Mr.
Thanks,
Pilato.
Paul. The big thing from my perspective is that we have a tired stock and it's not been managed very well. We keep looking to the provincial and federal governments for bailouts and some sort of solution, and frankly, they're becoming crutches. We need to start taking care of our people now, today, and the way you do that is tapping private sector funding, tapping pension funds, finding those resources to help solve the problem now. Housing is fundamental to solving poverty and all of our social justice issues in our community. That's what I'm fighting for. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Here,
Thank you, candidates. Thank you for your questions, students, and thank you for your responses, candidates. We will now be moving into the second section of this debate, these being the candidates' questions. So the way that we're going to be moving forward on this is we'll be going left to right across the stage. One at a time. So, sorry, that's my left. It'll be right to left based upon the way that the audience is looking. So I am going to ask Mr. Milley to ask a question to any candidate of his choice.
Most predictable thing in the world. Thank you very much for coming up, Paul. My name is David Milley. Paul, your plan for safe consumption sites do not include a permanent site. How do you believe that you can convince the federal government to permit a mobile site when your plan for it does not include that fixed site?
I don't make a big mention, David, of the fixed or permanent component of it because I'm focused on the complete care facility. If we need to put a chair there to qualify and make the mobile injection system qualify so that we can resolve issues in our community, that's what I'm focused on. The whole thing about this fixed versus permanent is really just a ruse. It's about creating regulation and barriers when we should be talking about how do we resolve the issue. The other thing, quite candidly, is I'm going to be focusing on talking to our provincial and federal partners to say, look, we have a better solution here in London. Everybody is stuck on fixed and permanent sites when I see them as potential risks to neighborhoods that I'm not prepared to give up on, nor do I see them as something that are flexible enough to deal with an evolving and moving drug culture. I want to solve this problem, and I'm very committed to doing so. Everybody else is servicing it.
Thank you, Mr. Pilato.
I'll finish your thought on that one. You are convinced on resolving it. How are you going to resolve an issue that has been around in our civilization as long as time? If Mr. Pilato actually had a resolution to this issue, he would be a very rich man and he would have a Nobel Prize under his belt.
Well, I look forward to accepting the Nobel Prize because I think we're going to fix this thing. I've been studying models all over the world, in Europe and in the United States, and what I'm proposing actually works, and I've seen it work. It's not perfect, nothing is in the drug culture, but it's what I think the most nimble and adaptable system out there right now. I'd like to see us utilize it, and quite candidly, I'd like to see us all come together as a community, because one thing we all agree on, this problem needs to be resolved.
Thank you, candidates. Ms. Park, you now have the opportunity to ask the candidate of your choice a question.
Sure.
Earlier this evening, a great question was raised about the Safe Cities Initiative and the good work that ANOVA and the City of London has been doing, and you had a good answer to that, to the work that you've done here in our community with other organizations. Why did you vote against the national strategy when you were an MP?
Well, let me be clear. When you look at what you've done in the past, and I look at the involvement that I've had in this community in terms of supporting the type of infrastructure that surrounds us as safe cities, we are a welcoming community to people from all around the world. And I would say to you that my record speaks to the commitment that I have to the citizens of London. And frankly, that's, and I'll stand by that, and I think Londoners would look at that and say, that's an honorable position.
At one point in time, there was a lot of advocacy here in London for a national strategy to end violence against women. And at that time, the Conservatives voted against that strategy. I did not hear an answer at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you for the yes. Mr. Yes, you have a chance to rebut the rebuttal.
Well, as someone who had a sister who died as a result of sexual violence, I can tell you that that's an issue that I take incredibly seriously. And I would say to you, and I would say to women and men in our community, that abuse stops. It is not acceptable in my world, and it is not acceptable for any Londoner. I'm sorry.
Thank you, candidates. Mr. O'Connell, you now have the opportunity to ask the candidate of your choice a question.
All right. So my question, Paul, is at the last 3 debates last week, you stated that you wanted to use pension funds for social housing and infrastructure. Could you clarify which pensions you're referring to, and why would you consider that a good idea?
Good question. Basically, I'm talking about the OPSU, the teachers, a lot of the Ontario-based pension funds, the trade unions. And the reason I think that's a good idea is that it is patient capital. If you do private sector partnerships, there is always a risk that a partner is going to go under or decide to deviate from the project. I believe pension funds are patient capital. They'll accept a lower rate of return, lower stream. They will be interested and motivated to support communities that are like social housing, where we're dealing with low-income individuals, rent to own. And then the other thing that's really important is the dollars that are derived, the returns that are derived by the pension funds, end up going back into the community. The firefighters and the police, they end up spending money at retailers and restaurants in the local community. So it's a circular economy. I think it's a good fit. We don't have any other option.
Mr. Pilato.
I find that as mayor, you wouldn't necessarily have access to pension funds, because that is out of our mandate, it's out of our purview. Especially when it comes to provincial matters, I wouldn't want to gamble with people's pensions on infrastructure projects if they weren't willing to invest already. So if you're referring to actually negotiating with them to unlock those pensions, is that what you're referring to?
No, actually, quite to the contrary. I believe that when I'm talking about a mayoral debate, what I notice is a lot of people like to talk about what I can't do. I'm looking for solutions to actually find resolution to these problems. If there are people with a better capital acquisition plan, the suggestion box is wide open. And as a mayoral candidate, my job is to pursue any and all venues to make sure that we resolve our housing challenges.
Thank you, candidates. Mr. Pilato, you may ask a question to a candidate now.
Nina, come on up. Nina, my question is actually pretty simple. You've been a poverty advocate for a long period of time. What are the 3 things you would like to see the mayor step forward and do on behalf of your community?
Oops. Poverty is a very important thing to me, and I really would like to see a lot more people off the streets. I think that priority needs to take a stand when it comes to BRT and other new creations that we have in London, Ontario. Sometimes I wonder where they get the money to do this, and they can't come up with the money for upgrades for London housing, Middlesex, mold issues, and 50-year-old flooring. I think it's essential that we take priority and start thinking about what really needs to be done.
Well, thanks, Nina. It's funny because we've gotten to know each other a little bit during this debate and this process. And one of the things that I've always liked about Poverty Advocate is that they really dig deep and they have great hearts. And one of the things that I'm hoping to do if I'm a mayor is to be able to continue to network with people such as yourself to find those opportunities to address this. I would love to see the basic income program come back. I would love to see the ability for people to have access to affordable transit and an ability to get around and be enabled and get to jobs. And of course the big one is I'd love to see them put the roof over their head so they can start to have some dignity in their lives. Thank you.
Ms. McCutcheon, you may take 30 seconds to rebut if you would like.
Okay, yeah. I too want to see a lot more happen. People out there in poverty do want to work. Many have a lot of talent. They need to put that in practice. The government would benefit from them. They would learn from them. And I believe that lives are important. Their needs are important, and that we need to work out a plan that is essential, a financial plan over the poverty line, and a treatment plan with enforcement in order to help those in poverty.
Thank you, candidates. Mr. Leonard, you may now ask a candidate a question.
More people are dying from air pollution than starvation on this planet. So, Mr. Chang, as an oil industry consultant, what can you tell the fine folks gathered tonight what the City of London can do about smokestack, tailpipe pollution, smog,
Please get
environmental,
to the questions.
And Chang for change, is that good change or bad change?
Thank you for the question. As you folks know, I am in the oil and gas industry around the world, tens of millions of dollars per month. But as I've said many, many times, long time now, my preference is we don't burn another drop of oil because we are polluting the earth, we are polluting the ocean. I want us to promote more environmental, sustainable farming and fishing. We can put more solar cells on the roof, farming on the the fish farming and the vertical farming. But I want our buildings in the city that we have some influence over to be energy neutral. I want us to develop those. Thank you.
Thanks. I was hoping for some more City Hall specific things. We have some issues in the south end with the compost industry. It really stinks down there.
Yep.
So it would be nice if City Hall could go in and help those people with really lousy neighbors because they can't go on their porch, and City Hall might be able to do something about nuisance and things like that. That's kind of in the environment about the odor and that kind of thing. I was hoping for something along those lines.
Okay.
Mr. Chang, you have 30 seconds to rebut the rebuttal.
Thanks for bringing that up. I agree. But making buildings environmentally friendly is within our purview. We do have some influence over that. South London, I have visited them quite a few times. I'm not interested in more studies. It can be fixed. They have a ammonia and H2S problem that can be treated out. But it just needs enforcement from the city to say, we want this fixed. No more studies. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Mr. Chang, you may now ask a question.
This might sound nasty, but it's not brought up. So I have to ask Mr. Paolato, You're on the Sunshine List. The last 4 years, you made, what, about $1 million. And your spouse is with Sifton. So how do you address that?
Well, thanks for the question. I'm prepared to take a pay cut of $100,000 per year for the opportunity to serve the people of London. That's the first thing. The second thing is my wife is a very successful person, and she's done very well on her own. She doesn't need my help by any stretch of the imagination. If anything, I need hers. And I'm very proud of her, and how she's become a part of this election is actually a very sad, or a sad reality. The last thing is the Sifton Corporation has been around for nearly 100 years. It is an icon in this community. It is an exceptional organization. And once again, they are going to be very successful with or without Paul Pilato in the role. So I'm pretty comfortable standing before people in the City of London, prepared to take the pay cut I am in order for the opportunity to make our city better for everyone. Thank you.
As a point of clarity, your wife was on the Sunshine List also, no?
No, she's not. She's been in the private sector, just so we're clear.
According to the
Candidates, I would ask that instead of back and forth, that the rebuttal be made and then the counter rebuttal be made.
As a mayor, how do you clarify and step aside from any development? You have to make decisions on major issues, and that is a mayor's job. When Sifton is involved, they are in all the lands around London. How do you separate yourself from that?
Well, Mr. Chang, my wife is actually considering leaving Sifton in large measure because of the response of people like you and the London Free Press. And that's a tragedy. But if in the event she decides to stay, the expectation I have is that we're going to manage the relationship in accordance with the conflict rules as set by the Integrity Commissioner, and I will seek proactive advice on all those elements. And I certainly hope that all the other candidates, both mayoral and councillor, be as clear and forthright before the election on their potential conflicts of interest. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates.
Stay up there, Paul.
Mr. Murray,
Stay up there, Paul.
you may now ask a question.
Oh, that Paul.
Oh.
Yes, before we continue into the question, please designate which Paul you're referring to.
Mr. Chang, you've heard me say I was going to have, particularly on the website with the decision-making, a special site for the candidates that participated in all this. So when I win this election on October 22nd, will you participate on the internet to make decisions, or do you have to be elected mayor
Please
so
get
that
to the
you
question.
will participate in, so that you'll
Please get to the
participate
question,
in
Mr.
helping,
Murray.
and helping run the city?
Let me do even more. As I said on our platform and on our the flyers that we handed out so far about 25,000 of them to these residents of London. I want an open forum. Right now, when you have a complaint, when you have an issue with the city, you submit your complaint, your issue, it goes, you don't know where. And nobody knows where the system is. And if you want to refer to it 6 months later, you don't know where you are. I want an electronic forum open so we can track it and we can follow it. So that you cannot ignore it. Say, well, we don't know where it is. Well, we do know where it is. It's right there electronically. How's
Right
that?
on. And just to say, when I do get elected on October 22nd, the other Paul there, I look forward to his participation on the site when we work on the accounting at City Hall, because he's got some really good number ideas.
Mr. Cheng, you may take 30 seconds to rebut the rebuttal if you'd like.
No rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Holder, you now have an opportunity to ask a candidate a question.
May I ask David Milley to come forward, please? You know, we've been together for some weeks now, and through that time, you get a sense of how people are and how they respond to questions. I've been particularly struck by some of your sensitivity to issues, but one of the ones that keeps coming up is the issue around
Please get to the
safe
question,
injection
Mr. Holder.
sites, and I'd like you to, could you expand on that a little bit, and then we'll get more into it in the rebuttal. On safe injection sites.
On safe injection sites, where I stand is very, very simple. I back Dr. Chris Mackey, our chief medical for the London Middlesex Health Unit. I believe that I need to get engaged with experts who know what they're talking about, and we need to give them the support that they need. We don't need a political solution, we need a health-based solution to what is a medical problem, not a criminal one. Thank you.
What I heard you say in past debates were three things. One, that it saves lives. Secondly, that safe injection sites are important because they stop the spread of disease. And ultimately, that it saves money, that it's economical. But could you talk about the piece that isn't being talked about much at all, which is the wraparound side of it? So in other words, once we've saved their lives, what happens next?
Are you talking about the fact that the nurses that are available there are giving 136 references to drug rehabilitation programs? Are you questioning whether I want to make sure that the province funds a full detoxification center here in London, as well as the rehab programs that you'd have to go to Windsor or Guelph for now? Yeah.
Thank you, candidates.
All the above. Thank you.
Mr. Baramporium, you now have the opportunity to ask a candidate of your choice a question.
Mr. Milley, once again. I'd like to ask you, Mr. Milley, you're very firmly for BRT. My question to you is this. This is an already obsolete and outdated technology. Even if this plan works on time, hypothetically, as we all know.
Please get to the question, Mr. Baramporian.
Okay. In 10 to 12 years from now, when this plan is complete and turned into a fossil.
Mr. Baramporian, please ask a question.
The question is, don't you think that we need a better plan that we can be on the same page with the rest of the world as a modern city?
Let's be honest, we need to get moving. There is concerns around the current BRT plan, but it's a good plan. The opposition to it, saying it's obsolete, I don't believe is true. We will be able to adapt our buses in the future with technology. As autonomous vehicles come, I won't be able to afford an autonomous car, but I will be able to afford to take an autonomous bus. As far as the further concerns it's a management issue. What the people are saying is I am concerned with how City Hall is going to manage this system going forward, and I think we just need to make sure that we're open with how we manage it, with how we are meeting our service levels, and how we're ensuring that our service levels do not cause too large of a tax increase.
The City Hall has already proven to us that they're very good at wasting resources. Don't you think that we need to improve affordability and level of good life so that everybody can afford what they need to afford? And don't you think that we need to invest and look at other things such as environmental things that we can invest in and create employment, such as using the already overloaded trash compounds that we have and use them into turning energy producing company? Thank you very much.
30 seconds.
You may now rebut.
I think that nothing increases the affordability of London more than having a transit system that's not for those who have to take it, but those who want to take it. If you are able to ditch your second car, you're going to save on average $10,000 a year. That's a heck of a lot of money. I would love to have an extra $10,000 in my household budget, and BRT is going to allow us to have that system that will be able to be taken into downtown, that will be a true commuter system. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. And Ms. Mccutcheon, you may now ask a candidate a question.
Tanya? Hi, Tanya. My question has to do with injection clinics. Do you believe that injection clinics are a temporary resource and that we need better concrete answers for addiction in London, Ontario, alongside BRT?
Please get to the question.
Okay.
So I believe the question is supervised consumption sites a temporary means? If we were able as a race the human race to fix addictions, it would have been done long ago, and some of my competitors here have articulated that. I think in our community, every doorway, every alleyway, park, etc. is an unsupervised consumption site, of which we have no control. What these sites do is bring that behavior indoors, off of our streets, out of our parks. And I think it's a really important way to go so that we're treating people with the dignity and humanity that they deserve, recognizing that addictions puts people through absolute hell, and making sure that we can support them and their families through that is incredibly important.
I believe that we need better treatment and not just Band-Aids. I believe that alongside BRT financial institutions, that we need to take care of lives. And I think that putting financial substitutions into poverty lives is a lot more important, don't you?
I think that Ms. Mccutcheon raises a very good point, but we also have to remember both the federal and provincial government have different streams of funding. There's a transit stream of funding. There's a mental health and addiction stream under the umbrella of healthcare. So I don't think it's one or the other. You can do both when you have these opportunities to leverage dollars. Even this week, our council put forward a budget submission, a pre-budget submission for dealing with mental health addictions and also poverty and also homelessness in our community.
Thank you, candidates. And that concludes the second section of our debate. We'll now be moving into our final section, Section 3. This is the section for audience questions. I assume that all those looking to ask questions are already ready or have moved towards the podiums. But if they haven't, then I'd ask that they do so now. Are we ready?
Apologies. My name is Chris. I'm a fourth-year political science student here at King's, and my question is this, for all of the candidates, apologies. Can you please name one political figure, past or present, that you identify with or inspires you in one sentence, please? Thank you.
So before I sort of proceed with the questions, for questions that have been asked broadly, I'll be picking 3 people or a group of 3 people to ask the question or to respond to the question. And again, candidates, you will have 40 seconds to respond to these questions, and there will be no rebuttal periods. So I would ask that Mr. Holder, Ms. Mccutcheon, and Mr. Leonard answer these questions.
Well, thanks for the question. The person with the most influence in my life as it relates to politics is Terry Fox. That might sound a little curious, but I tell you, having met him and having been involved with his family quite extensively and appreciating the impact he has in terms of moral values, in terms of giving to others, in terms of commitment and service above himself, I will tell you that person is a role model to the world, and the one that we could, if we all exemplified his kind of character and behavior, this would be a better Canada. Thank you.
Thank you.
Since being involved with poverty and working with City Council for the last 5 years, I really look up to one of the city councilors, and his name is Mike Van Hulst. He has been there through thick and thin, through many issues in my life, right across Canada. Texting, involvement, he's been there through a lot of health concerns. My life was in jeopardy in Vancouver, BC, and he was there for me through thick and thin. I really admire Mike Van Hulst.
Thank you.
Some of you might be old enough to remember Pierre Elliott Trudeau. In 1982, he was instrumental in bringing in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And Section 2, freedom of thought, belief, expression, and speech, which is under attack now, right now, by people like Doug Ford and the CAQ in Quebec, who want to use the notwithstanding clause, Section 33. So let's hear it for Pierre Elliott Trudeau.
Thank you.
everybody?
You're good to ask the next question. Before the question is asked, the next group is the question going to be pointed, or will the question be to the panel?
It's either one. It has to do with transit in the city.
Okay. So then in this case, the people that will be responding to this question are Ms. Park, Mr. Milley, and Mr. Murray. You may ask the question.
As we wait for the results of the BRT study, what do you plan to do in the immediate future to address the subpar transit system that is existing right now in the City of London? The fact that many people who are not being able to access decent paying jobs because they can't get there because the buses don't run there, and they are spending an average of 3 hours on buses to get to a subpar job. What will you do in this immediate future to address those issues?
Thank you very much for that question. Right now, our London Transit Commission is on time about 52% of the time. And if you're trying to get to work, that doesn't work for you. You'll get written up the other 48% of time. Over the past few years, London Transit Commission has been trying to get access into the industrial areas and has spent a lot of time with the employers in these regions, talking about what are the peak periods where you actually need service. So they've received a report at the London Transit Commission just this past week talking about those things so they can progress it forward. They're going to have to come to City Council for more funding for that, and that is something we absolutely need to fund. When individuals in our community cannot get to work on time, they cannot get to appointments or take their kids to the doctors, there's a real struggle here in our community.
Your time is up. Thank you.
Carlos, would you like to go, or do you want to go? I thought there was someone else was going first. Go ahead.
Me and you.
Okay,
Mr. Milley, if you can answer the question, thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe in supporting the work that the LTC is already doing to get into the industrial areas such that we can free up those jobs, or free up the application pool so that more people can access those well-paying jobs out there. I also believe in light synchronization projects, getting them in advance such that we can get the buses ahead to where they need to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I can see what you mean about being like regions that are not serviced. It's not particularly well serviced out to Lambeth. It's once an hour a bus, and I would think of getting some. Can someone?
Excuse me, is there somebody in the audience who's speaking out of turn? Thank you.
I'm sorry, I was thinking about putting some small buses on just during the rush hour to get people to their work and have them in the regions that are not well serviced. I myself am going to have a hard time getting to a debate next Wednesday because it is past Hyde Park Road and what's it, the Riding Club. I can't get to it, and there's no buses going there.
Thank you, candidate. Next,
my question is for Mr. Chang. Given that London was the site of a large-scale pilot program for safe injection sites, how do you intend to use those specific results to inform your policies on harm reduction and addiction issues?
Thanks for the question. I don't have the data for that particular test, but I do know that I want an endpoint. We have to, every one of us in here, as Canadians, as Londoners, would take the shirt off our back to help a fellow person in need. But I cannot accept the fact that we will kill you slowly, cleanly, forever. So there has to be a treatment at the end of it, and I want to make sure that person gets treatment that they need.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. The next person may ask the question.
Lifetime resident of London. My question is to Tanya Park. As a veteran of the council, and a present member of the city council, this is my question. How would you actively support the development of a plan that will work to prevent and control the unlawful and riotous behavior of Western students and Fanshawe students at their annual gatherings on public streets or public property?
Thank you for the question. I think when Western decided to move homecoming further into the cold season, I think what that did is it created two pressure points in our community. Just yesterday, the chief of police came out with his statement about FOCO and what needs to happen from the enforcement leg of that. Over this term of council, we've put in bylaws to ensure safety of the individuals who are attending events like this, but we have to also recognize that municipal council can enact bylaws, but when it comes to actual enforcement of the law, that's where it comes down to the chief of police and his team.
Thank you. The next person may ask a question.
So this is for anyone who wants to answer. As a cyclist, I feel forgotten due to the poor maintenance and safety in bike lanes. Yesterday I was hit by a car who was driving in the bike lane. So what will you do to make cyclists' lives easier?
Thank you for the question, and I'm going to direct this to, again, 3 candidates in particular. So Mr. Pilato, Mr. O'Connell, and Mr. Barenporian.
Thank you for your question, and I'm very sorry to hear about your accident. One of the parts of my plan is actually around active transportation. I want to help the mobility of our community across all modes, and that includes bicycles. And a lane is not a bike lane unless it is protected, connected, and maintained. And so we're going to put that into place. We're going to put in place the right protection measures so that you do not have to deal with that ordeal. I see it all the time. Some people are getting killed out there, and we're going to have to take some responsibility to make this particular environment a lot more enabling for students and frankly for all people in the city who want to make active transportation a core piece of their transportation future. Thank you.
I'm very sorry to hear that happened to you. It's something that I've seen, and it's far too common, and I'm not happy with the situation. Part of what I've been proposing is that wherever possible, I want cycling lanes taken off the road. If we can put it next to the sidewalk with 2 separate lanes for cyclists to use freely, that would remove that issue. Now, granted, in some areas that's not going to be possible, but we need to do better, because the one bike lane that they put in with nothing more than parking concrete curbs, that's not sufficient. I knew as soon as they put that in that something was going to happen to somebody. So I would rather us actually build it right and do it right the first time. Thank you.
I'm also sorry that this has happened to you yesterday, but I'm happy that you're okay. Cyclists, we need to thank them because they're taking a lot of traffic off the road by using environmentally friendly means to go from point A to point B. We definitely need to let people know that cyclists, even though they're on bicycles, they're also a priority, the same as pedestrians. So when cars are passing by, they should understand that the priority is with the cyclist and not with the car. And we definitely need to maintain the roads that the cyclists use and make sure they're protected correctly. And if we can move it off the road, I definitely am for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, candidates. The next person may ask a question.
This is a general question. If elected as mayor, how will you ensure that the city of London becomes compliant with the AODA by the deadline of 2025?
Thank you for the question. Since this was a general question, again, I'll be picking 3 people to respond. So Mr. Cheng, Ms. Mccutcheon, and Mr. Leonard will be responding to this question.
I'm 62, so I need a little help in hearing. Can you repeat that question? I didn't quite get that.
I'm going to make an exception in this case.
The question is, if elected as mayor, how will you ensure that the City of London becomes compliant with the AODA by the deadline of 2025?
Thank you for the question. We had an office on Queens Ave, 536 Queens. The intent was to stay there for a long time until the end of the election, but the landlady won't let me put a handicap ramp there because it's a heritage district. We had to move office. We found a new landlord. He says, no problem, I'll build you a ramp. And so then we moved over there. So we are acting what we talk about. We actually do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mccutcheon, you may now answer the question.
I'm not sure how to answer this question, so I'm going to pass. I need to look into that a little bit more.
Thank you.
If I understand correctly, people with disabilities have all sorts of issues, physical disabilities and otherwise, barriers of all kinds. Sidewalks coming down into the streets need to be graded for people in chairs, whether they're manual or electric, and that comes down to money. It needs to be done, it needs to be, the checks need to be signed, and most cities say that we can't afford it. Well, guess what? We need to afford it for folks that are having difficulty getting around. They are citizens like everyone else, and they need a chance to participate in daily life like the rest of us.
Thank you.
So we're talking about the AODA. I have a different question. Accessibility, and accessibility for people who require jobs or education. How are you going to help those individuals who need accessibility with jobs and education?
Thank you. And just to clarify, is that a question to the panel?
Ms. Park and Mr. Holder?
Okay.
Thank you very much for the question. I think it's really important that whatever resources the City of London can help with the agencies that help individuals access jobs, whether it be WIL, whether it be ATN access, etc., that we continue to do that work because everyone deserves access to a meaningful day work and a good paycheck to pay for those costs of living. I'm going to answer a bit of the AODA question. I think it's important that we look at our business community and the structures that they have and how they're not compliant, and perhaps start a community improvement plan to incent them to do those very things that put them into compliance with AODA.
Thank you.
Well, that's an important question because if people cannot get to their job because they don't have the appropriate transportation facilities, then frankly that is the most troubling, and that prevents them from their ability to work. One of the challenges we have in London is paratransit. Paratransit, it takes 3 days for you to get an appointment so that you can get to your place. And by the way, that may be your job, that may be school, that may be a place where you would just like to go, but you have to book 3 days in advance. And if you ever went through the myriad of setting that appointment, what we need to do is we need to work with the partners involved with this so that we can ensure.
Your time is up, Mr. Holder. Thank you, candidates. I'd like to call on the next question.
Good evening, candidates. My name is Edwin Saracini. My question pertains more to immigration and what can we do in the City of London to better accommodate people who are coming to this city new and not understanding the financial resources that are out there for them. A lot of the issue I have as coming from a family from Windsor, Ontario, and my mother who came from El Salvador and tried to help grow a family by herself, didn't really understand the financial instruments that were out there to help her, such as an RESB account for saving education for
Please get to the question.
I believe, my hypothesis is I believe financial literacy is a huge issue, not only among normal citizens, but
Please
also
get to the question.
Immigration. What is your hypothesis? What can you do for new immigrants coming to the City of London in this upcoming year?
Is that a question, before we continue, is that a question to the panel or a question to specific candidates?
That's the question to the panel.
Great, thank you. So the next people that I'll be asking to come up to speak are Mr. Pilato, Mr. Milley, and Mr. Murray.
Thank you very much for the question. The big problem we have right now is we're not doing a good job of welcoming newcomers into our community. Our job performance, our job tracking, ability to find employment for newcomers is actually tracking well behind our counterparts in other municipalities. What I want to do is actually put more of a concentrated effort, put more of a welcoming center in place, help people with that financial literacy that you speak of, give them the tools they need to be enabled. And the biggest thing, quite candidly, is find jobs. We need to focus on investment attraction and finding jobs. I have a plan to do that, and part of the reason I'm interested in doing that is to make sure all Londoners are enabled with employment and opportunities to contribute to our community. Thank you.
I work in the financial services industry, and what you're mentioning is very, very specific and focused advice that you need to be given. I believe that we need to make sure that the newcoming community is able to find financial advisors that are able to speak with them candidly and understand their situation. We need to highlight those folks who are doing great work in our industry and make sure that they're educating properly. That's part of a regular interaction there. And we just need to highlight those who are helping those communities. Thank you.
Thank you.
One thing I particularly have noted from people that are new immigrants, one thing that should be given to them is full access to English as a second language course, because you are in a community that primarily speaks English, well, I guess, or French legally in Canada, but like you really should learn. You're gonna have to talk to someone at some time. You want to be able to be understood.
Thank you, candidates. The next person may ask a question.
Hi, my name is Kyla. I am a first-year political science student from Huron University College. My question is for Ms. Park and Mr. Pilato. Premier Ford has made it clear that he will not support safe consumption sites. If elected, how exactly do you plan on ensuring that those dealing with addiction have access to programs like these?
Thank you very much for that question, and I hope it proves that's a situation that we have here in Canada. We've seen work in Vancouver about what kind of huge outcomes these sites have for individuals who are dealing with addictions. In our community, I will work alongside with Dr. Chris Mackey and his team. I'll work alongside with Regional HIV/AIDS Connection as they continue to support individuals who are dealing with addictions in our community. I think this is a time where London has to stand up and fight back against that, because we see the outcomes and the cost savings on our healthcare system. And so when you talk about the economics of the whole thing, I would think that the truer mind would prevail on that.
Thank you.
Well, as I said in an earlier response, I'm not a big fan of having to rely on provincial and federal government cash. I'd like to see what we could do to resource these issues, particularly since they're troubling our community. So my plan, and it's around dealing with our most vulnerable, speaks to making an investment in a complete care facility and in a mobile injection service. And the numbers around that are around $7 million in capital and around $4 million in operating. I know how I want to find the money in the budget, and I want to make sure we provide this service with or without Mr. Ford. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. I believe there's one final question. Is that correct? Great. Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, so mine is also related to the safe injection sites, and it's specifically for the candidates that are in support of it. As Mr. Miller mentioned earlier, there is a rehabilitation recommendation list that the nurses jot down names on. How do you ensure that people on this list actually get to the rehabilitation centers and that they don't just end up abusing these centers?
Before I let the question be answered, was that pointed or was that to the panel?
It was just to the candidates that support safe injection sites. I'm not sure exactly which ones they are. But.
I think everybody's.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to pick candidates to answer the questions as I have in the past. So I'm going to call upon Mr. Cheng, Ms. Park, and Mr. O'Connell.
Yeah, I do support safe injection site because we do need to help, we must help folks who are in need. I have met with Dr. Mackey, and I do support his analysis and his projections. We need funding to make sure not just the one slice, it is the whole treatment. So the person fell into developed the drug habit, but we have to make sure they come off it. So then that's the area. I have spoken with some of the recovery sites. They're expensive, $25,000 per treatment. It's about 30 days. And that funding has to be cooperated with the province. We can't do it by ourselves. It must be a cooperative.
Thank you.
So if I'm to understand your question, you're talking about how to keep people, like if they attend the site, to be able, okay. So the notion is that this is where social workers come in. Because we're talking about a comprehensive site, right? So it's not just the fact that somebody shows up, they shoot up, and they leave. There are nurses and doctors, medical staff to start with, but there are also social workers as well to ensure that people are taken care of once they leave. Because if we don't try to keep these comprehensive things in place, this is where people, you're right, are going to fall down, and we're not going to be really helping them in the long term. So I'm very much supportive of that. Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
It's important to note that you cannot make anyone do any particular thing. But when individuals are accessing the top site at 186 King Street, the probability is more likely that each and every time that they access this service, that they're going to become familiar with the people that are providing that service. They're going to trust the people that are providing that service. So as they walk with them step by step through their addiction, they will lead them to that path to recovery. Again, this is a problem that's been plaguing humanity for forever. And there are some people that have been very successful because they've been able to build strong, trustworthy relationships with those that serve.
Thank you. And if there are no further questions from the audience, then we're going to proceed into the final portion of this debate, and that's the closing remarks. So, as I said earlier, each candidate will have the opportunity to give a 1-minute closing remark to the audience, and we're going to be going in reverse alphabetical order. So without further ado, Ms. Park, I'd ask you to come to the stage to give your closing remarks.
Thank you. Over the last 4 years, it has been an honor to serve Ward 13, downtown London. Each and every day I walk into my office or council chambers, I've been working hard for my ward and the city at large. What's good for downtown is good for London. I think it's incredibly important that the next mayor has good working relationships with the council colleagues that will be re-elected. I think it's really important that you have good working relationships with not only the senior leadership team, but also our local unions in the city. I have those strong relationships. I can step into the mayor's office on day one and not miss a beat and continue where I have left off. In particular, on the bus rapid transit file, there were significant concerns about how that was going to impact downtown. And I was flexible and I fought for downtown. I fought to protect the loading zones in front of the Budweiser Garden and Covent Garden Market, and I fought to get rid of the tunnel because of the concerns that 3 years of construction would have on the local businesses there. I am flexible to any idea that will make this plan better for Londoners. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Pilato.
Well, my thanks to the Student Union for hosting this event, and to all of you for your patience and for all the great questions that occurred, and to my colleagues who took the time to participate. London has some serious challenges, but it also has some wonderful opportunities. And one of the claims that I've made throughout preparing for this process is that I've worked very hard to understand what the nuances are in our community, what the challenges are, and what the opportunities are. And I put together very substantive plans because I believe that Londoners deserve to have that level of detail and substance to help them make decisions. And I'm raising the game one level more. If I'm going to be a leader and I'm going to hold people accountable and set a vision and set a direction and support them, I need to be held accountable to you. So effective tonight on my Facebook page and on my Twitter account, and I believe by Monday on my webpage, I'll be publicly stating my action plan. both pre-oath and post-oath, my first quarter plan, so that people know exactly how I go about solving these issues. We need them solved now, and I'm prepared to serve you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. O'Connell.
Tall guy. I spoke to you about how this election is important, and we're at a point whether we want a city that challenges our problems or ignores them. To me, the choice is clear. We must move forward. I've spent months at City Hall learning firsthand about the issues that challenges us. My commitment has been unwavering, and I apply what I've learned. I understand that as mayor, my job is to guide City Council and provide direction for the city. I won't have the answers to every problem, but as your mayor, I will be knowledgeable, open, and listen. London deserves better than the status quo. We deserve a quality mayor, and to that end, my candidacy offers you authentic governance, professionalism, and vision. I want to thank everyone for attending tonight and for listening to all of us. And if you wish to learn more about me, please visit my website at thepoliticalhand.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Connell. Next up, we have Mr. Murray.
I'll tell you all, after October 22nd, I look forward to everyone getting together, all these people, particularly online and coming to City Hall at City Council and being able to vote, all of you people coming online and all the other people in the city. And after 4 years, I intend to step down and let someone else run the new kind of government that I have introduced. And I look forward to the whole world looking to London, Ontario and saying, is this going to be able to work? And then I will take it provincial and it will do the same thing. I call this new government democracy. And in its own fashion, what I am proposing truly is a government of the people, for the people, and by the people.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Next up, we have Mr. Milley.
Thank you very much. My name is David Milley, M-I-L-L-I-E, not Miller. That's my optometrist. Really good glasses, actually. London is going to continue to grow. London has always been growing. It's been growing as long as any of us in this room have been alive. What is at stake in this election is our legacy. What are we leaving to our kids, our grandkids, and all generations after us? Are we going to put the stop down on growth and progress, or are we going to continue the work that the current council has started us on? Are we going to continue attracting $1 billion a year in investment? I believe that a vote for Milley is a vote that will continue that. Make Milley mayor. It's Milley time.
Thank you, Mr. Milley.
Milley time.
Ms. Mccutcheon, you're up next.
There's so much more I would have liked to have said, but mainly, vote for Nina as mayor. I desire priority take place. It needs to take a stand in London, Ontario. Priority is lacking. Priority means stability in London, Ontario. Stability means maintaining health, the bill, climate, animal life, and the needs of our citizens. Without lives, we cannot teach, govern, plant, nurse, doctor, our city. Lives are our priority, and the needs of the lives in general. Creating new things is fine, but in order to create new things, we cannot neglect the issues we have in the city right now. We need action in London, Ontario, not excuses for lives and our needs. As a mayor, I won't sit around. I'll be out in the community looking for the needs and doing something about it.
McCutcheon. Thank you. Next up is Mr. Leonard.
Purple. 80% of Western students leave town after they graduate. Probably because they're not from here anyway to start with. We need to give them a reason to stay in town after. We need to give them placements, internships, and jobs. Fake homecoming, FOCO. We need better cooperation with students on this and keep them out of the hospital. My question is will the football team win the National Vanier Cup again this year? Mustangs on October 22nd. Vote Dan for mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard.
Throw the ball.
Next up, we have Mr. Holder.
Well, thank you, Student Union, for this evening, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for attending tonight. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues here over the weeks that we've been together, and you get to know them. These are people who care about this community, and I'm impressed by the caliber of their backgrounds and their commitment. There are three things that I offer as your mayor: experience in business, politics, and community. And I think those things over the last 37 years mark my background that I offer to you. There are several reasons why. Firstly, we need to bring our council together in a collaborative and consensus building basis. Second thing we do is we need to have the contacts at Queen's Park and the federal government to ensure that London, who cannot do it alone, just like any municipality, gets its fair share. The third thing we need to have is a transportation policy for all Londoners. The fourth thing we need to do is to ensure that we create jobs, and I've done that through my work as president of a medium-sized insurance company and created over 100 jobs. And the final thing we need to do is take care of poverty for people in need. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Chang.
Follow me. Follow me. It takes courage to say, follow me. When bullets are flying, you look at the guy and go, what? But it takes even more courage to actually follow. It takes more courage to actually follow. And I ask you, from the center of your soul, well up that courage to cast your vote and make a change. Because we have a clear choice. What was and what London can become. Bureaucracy, red tape, status quo. Or break away into a new day, a new change. London should be, can be, and must become world class for your generation's sake. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. Mr. Barenporian, you're up next.
As a lot of people already know, I'm not here to ask for your vote, even though I would appreciate if you did. Because we are in the situation we are at because we've made mistakes choosing the right government and the right people in. Not because they're bad people. No, they have the best intentions. But because the media and the lobbyists tell us which 4 are the top best candidates, which 2 are the top best candidates. And that's not the way we should do it. There are 14 candidates in here, but it's each and every one of you, your job to look deep and search correctly and see who genuinely has the drive, the vision, the experience, the intention, and whose background shows a lot of public service instead of showing off experience that comes with a lot of luggage that demands favors for people who brought me or someone else here in front of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Barenporian. Thank you, candidates, and thank you, audience members. It has been an honor to be your moderator this evening. Having reached the end of this debate, I would like to ask Council President Hadia Fiaz back to the stage to make some final remarks.
Hello again, everyone. I just want to start off by saying thank you for coming. Thank you to the students who submitted questions, and thank you to the candidates who took time out of their day to be a part of our debate. We invited all 14 mayoral candidates to our debate, and only 10 of them responded to our invitation, so they deserve a round of applause.
Thank you.
I think throughout the duration of this debate, it's become pretty clear that students care about this city. We care about the future of this city, as well as London community members. We all have the opportunity to choose the future of London. So I hope that tonight, with the questions and the answers that you received, that you have made up your mind, or are closer to making up your mind about who you want to lead London into the future. For the rest of the evening, we will be having a coffee and tea reception in the Student Life Center just outside, and the Ward 6 candidates, Phil Squire and Mike Bloxham, have also been invited. So I invite all of you to come join us and mix and mingle and ask any questions that might not have been asked during this debate. Once again, thank you for attending and spending your evening with us. Thank you.
Do we get to keep this thing? It was fun, man. Fun again. It was fun again. For the second time. You know what? There was a debate last week at the convention center. The day before that, I went into the convention